It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Kyle Benedict as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now here's today's Countywide.
Hello and welcome to Countywide. I'm Kyle Benedict, and today we're talking about fire safety, and specifically winter fire safety, with winter right around the corner. And of course, I'm joined by with Central Yavapai Fire Marshal Rick Chase and Fire Inspector Steve Emery. Guys, thank you for being here with me.
Thank you.
And you know, we're going to be talking a lot about stuff that people have heard in the past and maybe hear every single year. But it's just it's an important thing to, you know, touch on all these things with a lot of stuff going on throughout the holidays. Yeah. It's just a good thing to remind people of a lot of these precautions and things to look out for. So what are some of do you guys see an increase in accidents or maybe fires during the winter?
Actually, we do. Typically in the wintertime, we see more fires that happen inside residences versus outside during our wildfire season. One of the most common things that we see that causes some of these fires are the improper disposal of ashes from fireplaces. So we always like to remind people on the proper way to dispose of their ashes. You know, don't put them in cardboard boxes, don't put them in plastic buckets, but try to find either a metal bucket or a metal trash can, something that you can put a metal lid over, and don't put it next to the house or on a wood deck. Keep it away from combustibles. We recommend that folks move it out to the yard and then soak it with water.
And those ashes, how long are they still are they still active? I mean, are they dangerous for?
Oh, they can be active for several days after they've been put into a bucket. Sometimes folks will move them out, and we've seen where the winds have come along and moved that top layer of ash and have exposed some of the coals, which of course from the wind they will get hot again. And we've seen fires start from being next to houses. The siding will catch fire, some of the masonite or wood siding. We've seen fires start on decks where the ashes have been sat on. So it's just a great idea. Don't put them by anything, any weeds, bushes, anything combustible. And
kind of adding, you know, you're talking about those result in fire a lot of times, but so I guess just segueing into fire alarms. I mean, we just had Fire Safety Prevention Week a couple weeks back, and the focus of that was smoke detectors, fire alarms, and making sure those are up and running. So, Steve, how important is it to make sure that you check those, and I mean, because they can save your life in the long run, right?
Absolutely. That's the whole point of having a smoke detector, is it detects something that you wouldn't necessarily know about until it would be too late. They're, you know, pretty high tech. They've been around for a long time. They're very simple in their operation. They detect smoke and carbon monoxide at a level that we don't detect until much later. So,
how often should you check those smoke detectors?
You should. The general rule is on an annual basis. Your birthday, Christmas, something that you can remember every year, and change out those batteries and those smoke detectors. A lot of times people will just kind of take it for granted that they're just going to work, and then they hear this beeping noise in their house and they can't figure out what it is. That beeping noise is typically the smoke detector, carbon monoxide alarm, whatever, is the battery is going bad.
Talk a little bit about that carbon monoxide alarm. I mean, because you mentioned that before the show, and how that's just equally as important in a lot of cases. Why is that?
Well, during the wintertime especially, if you have gas appliances or propane appliances or fireplaces or wood stoves, all of these items have the potential to put out a level of carbon monoxide. So we always urge people that if you have any appliances like that, have a seal detector, at least one in the house, because that will alert the residents if there is a level that gets to a dangerous level. You know, a lot of times people have fireplaces and can close up the damper at night. Well, then all of those gases end up settling in the house and could create a carbon monoxide incident. So make sure those dampers stay open. It's great to have appliances checked if they don't seem like they're running appropriately. If there's issues with them, have a technician come out and check those, because, you know, it could be leaking some, you know, gas into the house. You know, again, some of the flames and whatnot that come off the stoves. If all the gas doesn't get burned up, a lot of that can create some seal in the house as well.
If you don't have one of those detectors, what are some of the things you should look for if you do have a leak or something with you know, carbon monoxide or something? What are some of the red flags?
Well, of course, well, if you start feeling dizzy, start feeling nauseous, you're just not feeling right, a lot of times those are some early symptoms. If the appliance doesn't seem to be working appropriately, doesn't seem to be, you know, working correctly, have a technician come and look at it. I would suggest not even using it, turning it off, turning the gas off to it, you know, whether it's propane or natural gas, just to eliminate the possibility of something going wrong.
Okay, and you know, obviously winter, you know, it's cold out, it's chilly. A lot of people maybe don't have fixed heaters in their house. They have a lot of portable space heaters. What are some of the things to kind of be aware of when using those?
Yeah, you want to go ahead, Steve?
Yeah.
You know, the space heaters in and of themselves are not a dangerous thing. It's where they're placed in the home. A lot of times people will, been my experience, to find space heaters in bedrooms, and they keep them next to the bed, pointing at the bed so that they can get heat during the night. The problem is they do create a tremendous amount of heat. They have a fan in them that blows that heat. If it's too close to any combustibles, cardboard paper, you know, the sheets on your bed, seen that before, it will, you know, start those things smoldering. It's not like they burst into flames, but they start to smolder, and as they smolder, they're getting to a point where they will catch fire. But in the meantime, now they're putting out that, you know, the products of combustion, mostly carbon monoxide, again, and now you have a problem. So,
is it bad to keep those on throughout the night? Because, you know, a lot of people have them on and then they just don't even think about, you know, turning them off at night. I mean, is that something, are they, I guess, more dangerous after being on for a longer period of time?
well, the longer they're on, I mean, the more heat that they're generating, and the units themselves are usually made out of metal. So now you just basically are creating this big metal hot box that is, you know, could be a potential problem. The nice thing about most of the heaters that come out today, especially, and really a lot of appliances that create heat, coffee makers, you know, stoves, space heaters, things like that, they have an internal timer on them or a temperature sensor that if they get to a certain point, they just automatically shut off. It's a safety feature that they built in because of incidents that we were talking about that have happened in the past.
Okay.
You know, Kyle, just to touch on that, a good recommendation is to read the manufacturer's specifications on each unit. Some may be made to go all night, some may not be. So I always recommend it for folks to read those directions and those instructions beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, just one more thing about that is they do draw a lot of power. So if at all possible, plug directly into a wall and not into an extension cord. And we're probably going to talk a little bit more about extension cords.
Perfect. And I think we're going to take our first break real quick and dive in to some more of these things that you should be keeping an eye out for this winter. We're talking winter fire safety with Fire Marshal and Fire Inspector from Central Yavapai Fire. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Oh, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork. Loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look. Your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov. If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Clean kitchen surfaces, utensils, and hands with soapy water. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
Welcome back to Countywide. I'm Kyle Benedict, joined with Central Yavapai Fire Marshal Rick Chase and Fire Inspector Steve Emery. And we're talking about winter fire safety specifically. Winter right around the corner, obviously. And right before we left, Steve, took a break. You mentioned power, and we were talking about space heaters specifically. And can you talk a little bit about extension cords and kind of the proper use of extension cords and things to be aware of?
Okay. The most important thing to really consider about extension cords is not using them as a source of permanent wiring. In other words, one of the most common things that we see in our office is people will use an extension cord to run a refrigerator, and they'll plug it in over on this side of the room. The fridge will be on this side of the room, and they'll run the wire around the office to get to that fridge, and then they'll leave it there permanently. The problem with that is they pull a lot of power, the refrigerator. They need to be plugged directly into a wall versus an extension cord, because extension cords aren't made to pull that kind of power through them all the time. What happens is over the course of, could be 3 months, 6 months, a year sometimes, that cord starts to degrade because it's pulling so much current through it. It heats up, and it's constantly heating up and heating up and heating up, and then one day you have that fire. So,
the heat, I mean, I know I read that you can, if you plug something into an extension cord and you're using it for too long, it can kind of heat up and also, cause whether it's something that is up against the cord or something to ignite. How long before something like that happens? I mean, are there different, levels of extension cords and what they can hold and not? I mean, I guess, how would you put that? But if you have an extension cord, are there different ratings and stuff for extension cords on what they can handle?
There are, yeah.
Okay.
You've got your real thin extension cords that are made for, maybe a small lamp or something. Then you've got, which we always recommend, the power strips. And a lot of those have the cords right on them, 4 foot, 6 foot. You can buy them all different lengths, and they're a lot thicker. They're made to carry more electricity, more amperage through those wires. So we always recommend to look at what you're plugging into it. Make sure the wire that is, or the cord that is on the appliance that you're using isn't bigger than the extension cord. Or, yeah, you don't want it bigger, because then obviously you're going to be pulling more amperage through that smaller cord. So we always recommend that. And to touch on cords at this time of year with Halloween and Christmas and all the holidays coming up, inspect them before you use them, because a lot of times they do crack, they do degrade, like Steve said, over time. And it's a great time to look at those over before you use them.
Well, like we were talking about during the break, a lot of people break out these extension cords when they're putting up their Christmas lights at the end of the season, throw them back into a box, and you don't use them for another year, and who knows how long they've been used for.
Yeah.
So kind of shifting gears a little bit, holiday season right around. I mean, we have Thanksgiving coming up, and then Christmas. A lot of people having family members come in, and they're hosting a lot of people, and a lot of cooking going on. Talk about unattended cooking and kind of how big of an issue that is.
Sure. You want me to start on that, Steve?
Go ahead.
One of the common things we see again, and it almost doesn't matter what time of year we tend to run into this, is folks will be cooking, and for some reason a distraction will come, whether it be a phone call, somebody at the door or something, and will walk away from the stove and forget they're cooking. One of the biggest things is using grease, of course. Grease gets to a certain temperature and it will ignite. So we always recommend, if you're cooking, stay in the kitchen, stay near, excuse me, the appliance that you're, if you're cooking on the stove or using a microwave or whatever it may be. Don't leave it, because a lot of times these things have started fires, which then of course goes up to the cabinetry and can therefore start a kitchen fire and spread. So yeah, with this time coming up, it's great to keep the kids out of the kitchen, keep the toys off the floor, just use the safety tips when you're cooking.
And what about, Steve, you talked about earlier, deep frying. That's obviously a big thing with deep frying a turkey during Thanksgiving. What are some things to be aware of when it comes to deep frying, something like that?
The deep frying fad, I call it, it's been around for a long time now, but it became kind of a big deal when they figured out deep frying turkeys makes them really delicious, so which is definitely a fact.
Yeah.
Not that it's a problem, once again, in and of itself, not dangerous. It's how you treat it and what you do when you're cooking with it. Typically, those tubs are pretty big tubs. They stand, off the floor usually. You're heating up gallons of that oil with a propane burner, so you're creating a lot of heat in there, and you're making it, potentially dangerous. When you stick that turkey in, it needs to be done very slowly, because you're now displacing all that oil. What will happen sometimes is they will have it in there, they will pull it out, and for whatever reason it gets too hot and they will drop. splashes that oil, hits that flame, and now it's off to the races. So
At that point, is there anything that you can do to kind of prevent it from spreading or put it out? What's the best way to go about that? Obviously, call you guys, right?
Obviously, yeah. If it's something that you feel is out of your control, I mean, definitely call 911. If there's any way to turn the flame off on that burner, turn that off, because that's your source of heat right there. And then fire extinguisher is really the best thing, and really should be there on site wherever you're cooking, whether you're out in the yard or on your deck, which. Yeah, if you're on your deck cooking your turkey, just be careful. Not here to tell you that you can't do it. Just be careful when you do it, and have that fire extinguisher handy. I mean, it wouldn't take much, a couple squirts of a fire extinguisher, and fire's out. Of course, you might be eating out at Denny's that night for Thanksgiving. So
the alternative route, right?
The alternative.
And obviously, you want to do that outside, right?
Obviously, you want to do it outside. Yeah.
Away from combustibles again. Watch what's around the fryer. So
Okay. Switching gears, also with this season, a lot of people are burning candles. What are some things to remember? I know a lot of people just think I have this candle kind of in this glass thing, and you light that, and it's going to stay confined to that. What are some things to remember when it comes to candles?
Candles, and again, we have seen some fires over the course of the years due to candles. Make sure that they're on something. Most candles do come in either some kind of a glass jar or something where it is made for them. The biggest thing with candles is watching where they are. Make sure they're not near curtains or drapes or other combustible type of items. If they're under cabinets, like if they're on the counter, make sure you're not using a really large candle that's going to, again, that heat will rise and can therefore, eventually start the cabinet on fire. If you have pets in the house, especially cats, make sure that those candles are somewhere where the animal can't knock it over. And another big thing is a lot of folks may have candles and then go to bed, and those candles will continue to burn. Is just try to remember, shouldn't say try, do remember to blow those candles out before you go to sleep.
What about Christmas lights? I mean, do you guys have any tips on Christmas light safety? A lot of people have these elaborate displays, and they just don't really think about changing the way they're directing this power to, I guess, power the lights on their house. What are some safety tips you have in regards to Christmas lights?
Sure, and Steve and I could probably both hit on that. I'll start off, again, use those power strips. Those power strips are made, most of them have an internal GFI on them, so if they do get overloaded or short-circuited for some reason, it will kick that GFI off. So I recommend using that, and again, checking the cords and everything. I know lights are made to where you can only plug so many strands together. Nowadays, it's recommended, and it's actually a more common light is the LEDs. They use less power, and they will last a lot longer, they will burn a lot cooler. So those are actually replacing all of the older style bulbs. Although a lot of the older style bulbs are still in place and they're still being made, not a bad bulb, but you just have to be careful on what kind of a cord you're using for them, and again, plugging too many strands in. So yeah, just checking those cords, like you said, as you pull them out every year. Things, I don't know if it's like this at your house. Mine, I can wrap them up really nicely, and I pull them out, and somebody has tied them in a knot in the attic. And it's just a great time to look at that cord and check for any cracking, and just
What about how some people leave them on all night, their Christmas lights all night? Do you guys recommend that or not recommend that, I guess?
I would say, my recommendation would be no, but once again, we can't really tell people how to live in that. So just keep in mind, really everything that Rick said. There's not a whole lot more for me to add necessarily. Just be aware that if you're leaving them on all night, make sure they're not near anything combustible, or they're covered up accidentally. Once again, the cat may have knocked something over onto it, and because it could potentially end up being a problem. And on live Christmas trees too, definitely not a good idea in my mind, in my perspective, in my experience.
Especially now they have those, those fake ones that look the same.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all about the aesthetics and the beauty of a live Christmas tree. If we can go into that real quick about live Christmas trees. If you're buying a live Christmas tree, try and get an actual live one that's in a pot or in a something like that, where it's going to be alive after the holiday season is over, instead of getting the cutoff ones. I know people like the cutoff ones. Once again, can't tell people what to do, but if you have a live Christmas tree, it's green, it's moist, it's wet. It doesn't have as much potential of being a problem if later on, when the dead Christmas trees have a tendency to dry out, get brittle, lose that moisture, and there's a little more potential there. So.
And then obviously stringing lights on those on that live Christmas tree as well is something to be aware of as well.
Yeah.
So okay, great. Well, we're going to take our second break, and then we'll come back and maybe touch on those Christmas trees a little bit more. So talking winter fire safety with Fire Marshal and Fire Inspector from Central Yavapai Fire. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
This is the moment I knew. His future had no boundaries.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
My new mom and I have a lot in common.
The great outside.
We both love the outdoors.
So shiny.
That's not a flower. We both love geology.
Oh, look. An igneous one.
That's not a rock. And she knows a lot about wildlife.
A labradoodle.
That's not a dog. Hanging out has been kind of fun.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are.
Up, college is hard. Down, those books are heavy.
My sport is football, but my passion is education. So every year I take promising high schoolers on a college tour to show them that higher education means a brighter future.
My name is Nnamdi Asamoah. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it. You can be a reader, tutor, or mentor too. Take the pledge at liveunited.org/volunteer.
Do you wear this?
Get caught buzz driving, and you could do some hard time.
Craig, knock it off.
Sorry, Mom.
It could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. And that could set you back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Countywide, talking winter fire safety with Fire Marshal Rick Chase and Fire Inspector Steve Emery from Central Yavapai Fire. Just a couple minutes left, guys, but you, Rick, were talking about water levels in with live Christmas trees. Talk about the importance of that.
Sure, yeah. I know a lot of people do get the Christmas trees from the lots or whatnot, where you cut the bottom, give it a fresh cut, put it into its stand. One of the most important things with that is check that water level daily. As long as there's water in there, that tree will stay moist much longer than obviously if that water was to, drop below the base of the tree or just, be all gone. So always check that water because that tree will therefore last much longer. Those are they should last about 3 to 4 weeks with water. So
okay. Yeah. And right before we go, I want to touch on the proper way to dispose of ashes again, since you guys mentioned that's one of the biggest issues you guys have around this time of year. So if you just want to touch on that again, Rick, with the way proper way to dispose of these ashes, whether it's fireplace or cigarette ash or any of that.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, this goes back to a lot of Steve and I both were on the engine and we're able to see a lot of these types of calls, and we just want to prevent those. So yeah, the biggest thing, of course, is not putting those ashes into a cardboard box, plastic bucket, anything else that could melt, that could catch fire. And don't leave them sitting in the house or even near the fireplace because you've got carpet and other things that are close by. Always recommend to clean out the fireplace, wood stove, and put them into a metal bucket, metal trash can, and again, make sure that there's not other combustible items in that trash can, such as bags of trash and whatnot. But a lot of folks have, the smaller metal barrel trash can type things that they'll use just specifically for fireplace ashes. Move them out to the yard, away from dry grass and leaves and stuff, and just douse it with water. Make sure that you have doused it real well.
Okay. Great. So right before we leave, Steve, where's a place someone can go for more information on this, or kind of maybe to, just a refresher of what we talked about today?
Right. The National Fire Protection Association, nfpa.gov, I believe. has a lot of reference material, a lot of training material on safety of all types, holiday safety, cooking safety, Halloween safety this time of year, as it's only about a week away. So great resource for people that want to understand a little bit more about these things.
Okay, great. Well, Fire Marshal Rick Chase and Fire Inspector Steve Emery, Central Yavapai Fire, thank you both so much for being here. Obviously, this is important, like we mentioned, to get this out there and remind people. So, winter fire safety, that's going to do it for this Countywide. I'm Kyle Benedict. We'll see you next time.